Good afternoon, everyone. If you allow me very quickly, I mean, what had just happened proved that you're really true change makers. You've changed things really quickly and adapted, and you've proven that you are really agile and adapted to a situation that we had. But I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you for being part of the Dubai Future Forum. Thank you for being part of the largest convening for futurists and change makers from all over the world. The world has been facing so many challenges, and we need unity. I'm going to talk about that maybe in a bit. But before that, I'd like to thank you again for being here. Hope you and your families are in best of health. And I hope that you have spared some time to actually enjoy Dubai and the UAE beyond this convening here and really get time to enjoy this country, one of the most inclusive countries and collaborative countries, more than 200 nationalities from all over the world. So I hope you enjoy it to the max. And Khulud, thank you, my friend, for inviting me today to this Changemakers gathering. I've been in one before, and I think this is a segue to what I want to talk about. And I've mentioned it maybe briefly in the last meeting that we had, but I think there's not a more important time for us to really convene right now and really make change. If you combine the global issues, if you will, I'm not going to talk about them, but across many things. If you talk politics, if you talk economy, conflicts, if you talk dealing with artificial intelligence, if you talk about the pandemic that we faced, talking about the fourth industrial revolution and the digital economy and what we need to really rectify and amend and create policies for, those are all signs that we really need to have change makers, if you will, but most importantly, have convenings and dialogues that are very diverse with different sets of opinions, coupled by a mechanism for execution and making the change. And we need to be open. I've witnessed the conversation last week and saw that everyone was candid and expressing their thoughts and feelings about different areas and things that need to be done relative to specific topics. And I didn't even mention climate yet, which ranks as one of the most pressing matters that can face humanities around the world. And we need to do something about it. And we all say one hand does a clap. We need everyone to be in the same room. So I'm very fortunate, Khulud, thanks to you and the team and anyone that has contributed to this, to be part of this conversation. And the idea, and I'm sure will be elaborated on, is that we all be open and candid and honest about what needs to be done and needs to be changed. And the ultimate goal is to take that content and the feedback that we get from those kind of conversations, but then create some kind of engine for execution and fast execution, because the clock is ticking, especially when it comes to climate. And unfortunately, as much as everyone is doing, I don't think we are doing enough. So we need everyone's support to make change happen. And with that, again, Khulud, thank you so much for having me part of this. And thanks to you all for being part of this conversation. And in any way or form, if we can help you catalyze those important conversations, the Dubai Future Foundation can be your home. Thank you once again.
All right, good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you also for not just hosting us here today, but thank you for your agility and flexibility. I think, everyone was really great in just moving their chairs and kind of moving around and adapting to the situation that we had. So I'd like to just begin very quickly by elaborating on something that His Excellency Khalfan already alluded to, which is encouraging everyone here to participate and speak. Now, why are we asking for that? So this session is titled the Changemakers Majlis. And I will talk to you a little bit about what is the Changemakers Majlis, what is this initiative that we have launched, and what are some of the values that are at the foundation and really guide the way that we conduct these sessions. So COP28 Changemakers Majlis is an initiative that was launched as a COP28 initiative. COP28 this year, for those of you who might not know, promises to be the most inclusive and action-oriented and solution-oriented COP yet. Now, that is going to manifest in many different ways, and this initiative is one of those ways. So this is us really walking the talk of being an inclusive COP and holding a solutions-oriented COP. Now, how does that translate in this setting? The word Majlis, for those of you who might not know, might be visiting the country for the first time, the Majlis is something that is really rooted in our culture and in our traditions as Emiratis, and also in the Arab world in general. It's a place of gathering that brings people together with the hopes to forge connections, build relationships, as well as present issues and problems and challenges that might be facing the community and try and solve them in a very inclusive approach and an approach that considers everyone in the room. So with that being said, knowing that the Majlis is something that is rooted in our culture, this is why everyone is here in this room. So we are not here as speakers. In fact, we're going to be presenting you with questions and wanting to hear from you, potentially, some of the solutions. The Changemakers Majlis is a way to bring people who represent diverse backgrounds, both professionally and personally, in order to talk about the topic that we're presenting. So in this case, we're talking about inclusivity in AI and how can AI really be inclusive in trying to solve some of the climate challenges that we are facing. So we'll be presenting you with some questions, and then we'll open the floor for everyone to participate. You have a thought, you have a potential solution, you know of an initiative, or if you are leading an initiative, this is the moment for you to share that. You can raise your hand. There are some mics around the room. We'll pass the mics to you, and we would love to hear from you. As His Excellency mentioned, we will be taking notes, not to keep track of what you're saying, but to keep track of what you're saying also, for the purposes of sharing it with you after, in order for us to really use this moment as a way to catalyze and begin some of those changes. So what I encourage you to do is be bold, be creative, be honest and transparent. And I will leave you with 4 values that I hope would guide the conversation today. And then I will hand the mic to my colleague here, Saeed, who will also be supporting me in moderating the session. The 4 values are hospitality, collectively, responsibility, and humility. When we say hospitality, I'm sure you guys have experienced already some of the Emirati hospitality, but it goes beyond food and drink. It goes beyond, the incredible experiences you have at the hotels. It's really about the people connection, which I'm sure you've already experienced as well. But what we mean by hospitality for this Majlis in particular is that we welcome everyone with kindness and respect. Collectively means that we are side by side shaping the future that we want to see by imagining it today. Responsibility is that we understand and acknowledge that the challenges are not simple, that they are big, sometimes overwhelming and daunting challenges. However, we believe in the power of our imagination. We believe in the power of every single person in this room, and that we are going to carry that responsibility with honesty and integrity. And finally, doing all of that with humility. And what we mean by humility is that every single one of you here has something of value to add. Every single person is welcome to share, and that we see value and we're listening with open eyes and open ears, and that we also see value, more importantly, not only in us as human beings, but that we recognize the value in all forms of life, so that there is value to be recognized in nature, and for us to, when we design those potential solutions, not only are we designing them for nature and for our environment, but designing them with nature, for nature. So with that, I will hand over the mic to my colleague Saeed, who would like to maybe introduce the topic. Would you like to say something?
I hijack the mic very quickly just to take this opportunity. I need to be in a few more sessions, but when I knew that the Changemakers is happening here, I just wanted to come and appreciate each and every one of you. And I genuinely look forward to the feedback. I'll be working very closely with Saeed and Khulud to accumulate all the content and all the feedback that's going to be achieved from this wonderful convening. So thank you again, and looking forward to seeing you all around the Dubai Future Forum. Thank you, Khulud. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I think it's amazing to be in a room full of talented individuals. I think Khulud have set the bar high. I think the expectations of everyone to sort of pitch in and participate and share some of their thoughts as well. So let me go ahead and set the scene. AI addresses global challenges like climate change, promising transformative approaches. However, the industry lacks diversity, potentially affecting solution effectiveness across cultural, diverse country, and the absence of representation could affect the solutions produced, making them less adaptable across communities, where climate realities are influenced by cultural and societal, potentially diminishing the overall effectiveness. How can we get ahead of this reality within the context of preserving intergenerational wisdom and prioritizing inclusive solutions design? So I'll start off with this question. I'll go ahead with it, and I want you to think about it, and I want to as many people as possible to sort of share their thoughts around it. What are the existing inclusivity gaps in AI and climate technology? And where do these two intersect? So when we speak about AI and climate change technology, where do we see the gaps, and where do we see them actually intercross? So who will start from the many talented people we have?
I'm Manish Juneja. I'm a planetary health futurist. I believe the future is yet to be written, hence the T-shirt is blank. When it comes to this question, so two things here. One is in terms of this inclusivity gap is that if you think of something like ChatGPT that is very popular today, it's been trained largely on data that's been generated by white men in Western countries in English. So I just read that, I think it was this week before I came here, or last week, the University of AI in Abu Dhabi here, they just launched the first bilingual large language model that would basically be like ChatGPT, but it's in Arabic and English. On top of that, it's designed before COP28 to promote more education and awareness in both those languages when you're using these tools. So that was one thing that people are actually trying to address this. Second of all, when it comes to the other gap that's in this space, especially the intersection of AI and climate, one of the problems that people don't talk about much is that stuff like ChatGPT and generative AI and AI in general in data centers has a huge footprint in terms of emissions, both the use of energy, the use of water to cool the data centers. And this is, again, where we need help. There's actually, again, at the university in Abu Dhabi, there's a chap there who's developed an alternative to ChatGPT called, I'm trying to remember the name, but you can Google him, but it uses 90% of the energy compared to ChatGPT. But it's been developed right here in Abu Dhabi, which I thought was fascinating. When we think about innovation, where is this innovation coming from? Sorry to be going on too long and rambling, but most of these AI events I go to, especially in California, with all these people building and investing for the future, they're actually ignoring what is being developed around the world and also what the people in the world need.
So, thank you so much. I'm Claire Nelson, Dr. Claire Nelson. I'm from Jamaica, but I live in the United States and have a futures practice. So I have a real challenge. There's a climate mitigation geoengineering project that's happening that I feel is very unethical. I would like to see if we can use AI in a way when somebody spots these things that they feel are going to be problematic. So the project is an NGO, research NGO, is moving green sand from Hawaii to test on a beach somewhere in Caribbean. And I don't think enough Caribbean scientists are included in the problem. So there's a big problem. Nobody knows the second and third order consequences. How can we use AI to democratize information from these, what I call, overreaching geoengineering experiments that could have second and third order impacts? We do a horrible job of foreseeing second and third order impacts. How can AI be used in such a way that if many other people were watching this, perhaps we can't stop them from doing it, but if maybe we could make it public and find a way for other people to put their data sets in those questions, we can get more information from different perspectives very fast and get people who are not necessarily educated but are part of the problem. So I'm meaning AI that's accessible to, in this case, fisher folk, people who have lived on the beach all their lives, and not just scientists with 6 degrees coming to come up with some overarching idea.
Thank you so much for that. And I love that you're already alluding to the question of inclusivity. And it will be, in fact, one of the questions that we would like to address even more specifically in the session.
Aloha, everybody. My name is Amanda Ellis. I happen to live in Hawaii, and I think I know about this. So I thought I would, I have another question. But from what I understand, it's a company called Vesta, which is looking at weathering of sand, and then that helps create more alkalinity, and it also helps mitigate against some of the CO2. It's a circular solution, so it's not long-term. From what we've seen in Hawaii, they're using it to try to build up some of the beaches, because we've already had 3 feet of sea level rise, and the $8 billion of infrastructure at Waikiki is a problem. So I'd love to talk to you afterwards and tell you what I know about what's going on. I have a big issue about dis and misinformation with AI. And we know, for example, that $4 billion is spent on disinformation around the fossil fuel industry just in the United States alone. So if AI is just ingesting information that is put out there and is often able to be traced to disreputable sources or sources that have a vested interest in putting out the wrong information, then how do we know that we're going to get the right data on climate to actually save the planet? We're at an existential moment, and what we do in the next 4 or 5 years is going to impact the lives of our children and grandchildren. So that, for me, is the really big worry with AI.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carmen Vislich, and I'm from New Zealand, and I'm a tech entrepreneur and using AI in a couple of platforms, and His Majesty talked about engines for execution, and so I've got some positive stories on using AI, and that a lot of the time we can't actually make data-driven decisions, and everybody used the word data and the lack of data. And so we've got 2 great case studies of 2 of my companies that are platforms creating data to make data-driven decisions to bring transparency on this. So Velocity has actually worked with government and collaborated to bring together disparate sets of data to measure climate change and then overlaid that with property. And so lenders can actually use it, insurance can actually use it, and instead of saying no to somebody because they're on a floodplain, they can actually see because of the house, because of the materials, because of where it is, actually they can say yes because it's further back on the property, or they can actually understand what's the work and the remediation they need to actually undertake to make that property more sustainable and support them, so for a warmer house, for solar, etc. So that work is now been rolled out across New Zealand, and we just had some floods. So it's a great example of collaboration of data and then using a platform, because otherwise, so what? If you're sitting on data today and if you don't actually turn it into actionable insights, then there's no value. The second thing was we had a very big problem in New Zealand. Our regulator regulated that the lenders need to measure their finance emissions and everybody needs to measure their carbon emissions and reduce that. And obviously with all the greenwashing, how do you actually do that in a transparent way and in a validated way? And so we worked with Toitū, which is the government certification arm, and we have used AI to go into these large organizations and capture all the different data in their silos, and then to use those models to report and allow them to see how do they predict where they're going to be in 12 months, where they're going to be in 3 years, so they can actually start delivering on these goals and report agnostically. And proud to say that we've got most of the New Zealand lenders now delivering scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And what we've done, because it does need the data to not have the greenwashing, is they have everyone consented to libraries of code for data sharing so that everyone can now benchmark. So no one sees individual data, but aggregated data, so that you no longer have these black boxes of saying I'm doing this, but you don't know how you're doing it. So that's working really well in New Zealand, and we're really excited to talk to any partners wanting to bring it to new places. Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sahbal Shoa. I'm the founder of the Jordan Space Research Initiative. A lot of my work is on the intersections between space and sustainability. And I wanted to bring it back to the point that you brought up, that the data that we feed into these AI models is inherently biased. And so that leads to biased results, obviously. But the way that I think this also links with the climate crisis is this idea of epistemic injustice, which is essentially how we obtain knowledge, how we pass on knowledge, what kind of knowledge we value over other types of, maybe Western scientific knowledge takes precedent over indigenous knowledge and wisdom and indigenous science. And this is a huge field of research, especially now working on climate change, on sustainability, even space sustainability, so looking further into the future, is how do we incorporate, not just incorporate, but how do we involve people who can bring this different value, this different perspective to ensure that we're not propagating the same injustice and the same kind of mindset that makes ChatGPT, for example, a very biased model. But not just that, there's this phrase also kind of in this field, algorithms of oppression, which I think is very accurate, because when you train it based on data that is inherently biased and inherently prioritizes, a certain view or certain human life over others, you are going to get data that's not going to be helpful for humanity as a whole. So I think in that sense, looking at this idea of epistemic injustice is very crucial. I would say I'm an engineer, but I feel this is more crucial than even the technology, because the technology itself is a tool. It can be used for good or bad, and it's up to us ultimately how we're applying it.
Thank you so much. Any other thoughts on the gap before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, hi, my name is Makbul. I'm co-founder of Hydrexa. It's a solar-powered atmospheric water generation startup here in Dubai. Just to add further to what the lady from Jamaica and the gentleman there were mentioning, that, thank you. When we come to talk about AI and in context of climate change, I think we need to move further beyond just ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is not AI. AI has been there. We see the aircraft systems and all, they are all automated. They have intelligence to that. So similarly, what we are working is, further to add to your point about democratization of the data that is available about the climate. There's so much of data that we can utilize, and what we are trying to incorporate as well is that if we effectively utilize it, we can increase the efficiency of sustainable systems. Like, for example, water generation, to increase in our calculations what we have done more than 8 times at 30% less cost and 100% sustainable. So what we need to do is to utilize, democratize the data and incorporate AI principles upon all of these to build the sustainable systems for the future.
Thank you. Please go ahead. Yes.
I have a different, my name is Paul Epping. I'm part of the Millennium Project, well known probably. I have a different voice. With all the data that we are collecting, what are we doing is outsourcing our thinking. Our thinking, everything that we are bringing to the internet is what the AI, the algorithms are using. So it's eventually what we already know, only in a different jacket. What we are doing now with this question as well is that we are now going to outsource our responsibility that we created to algorithms that are telling us what we already know. If we are going around here, everybody knows what's going on in the world. The only thing that we are now seeking for is hopefully correct data with correct algorithms advising us what we already know. We have to stop, very simple, overconsumption. And we have to change our economic system, which is the driver of how we got here. And what got us here will not get us there. And I think that we have to think about it. It's our own responsibility as one of your values. Not the responsibility, and I'm so afraid of that, to algorithms.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. I would like to just present the next question. And if you still want to comment on the first one, absolutely. But I would like, because it's already come up a couple of times, we started talking about the idea of inclusion and the idea of also indigenous knowledge and the value that lays within indigenous knowledge, but also inclusion of different demographics overall. So I'll start by just giving an example of a project or initiative that took place in Canada in 2001. So in 2001, the Pole Arctic Project actually chose to merge information and content from indigenous peoples and took indigenous knowledge and merged it with AI to enhance local fishing practices. And by doing so, it was basically kind of pioneering in treating indigenous knowledge and scientific data equally, creating adaptable solutions to climate-affected industries, such as, in this case, fishing. So with that in mind, and keeping in mind some of the comments that have been raised already in the conversation, how can we further include underrepresented demographics in AI from the earliest stages of design for AI climate tech design? Any thoughts on that? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. اسمي أليكسي. أنا من روسيا. Yeah, I'm Alex, and I'm a human engineer with a neuroscience and biology degree. I have experience with AI research and development. Suddenly European white man, even more suddenly Russian, and suddenly with the pessimistic view on AI and climate issues and the progress we have. And your question you raised is very interesting, because I think the most unrepresented community we have is a community of low wages countries. With AI, we have a risk of accelerating the inequality we have. For one reason, we have AI and the education and all the social lifts in the developed countries, and we have absence of that in other countries, in the rest of the world. And the problem is, it is accelerating with AI. And I see no solutions at the moment to help countries with a low income to basically jump through the industrial step, because all the countries, developed countries, basically started as industrial revolution movement, right? And basically, those countries are responsible for these climate issues we have right now. But those countries with a low wage, undeveloped countries, they have no privilege to do the same. So the responsibility of the developed countries and all these treaties, international treaties, is basically help those countries with education and any other opportunities to somehow, I don't know, give them advantage, give them something, the chance to compete with the others and be represented in global discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Kenan Shah. I work on the nexus, between arts, culture, climate, and sustainability, especially within the environmental humanities. And I also work a lot on the Congo Basin. And I just wanted to come back, yes, on this issue of inclusion with AI and climate action, to say that I think the point that was already raised prior to this on epistemic justice is one that has to be taken seriously. And I want to link it to one of the values, one of the 4 values that you shared when you were setting the stage for this conversation, the one of humility. I absolutely believe that it's important that we uphold humility in the domain of knowledge, that there should be epistemic humility, that even as we discuss AI and we go ahead to feed it with data and try to make it inclusive, we need to acknowledge its limits. And acknowledging its limits is an act of intellectual and an epistemic humility, and making it clear that it is not a kind of a magic wand that will solve all solutions. And also being aware that when we talk about, for example, indigenous knowledges and indigenous practices, some of them do not necessarily lend themselves to some kinds of usages, because they are also anchored on some kinds of spiritual understandings of the world. And so we need to keep those questions at the back of our mind, even when we want to incorporate a piece, let's say, indigenous data or indigenous wisdoms and knowledge into some of the things we want to do with AI, because they might actually not be in alignment with what the spiritual values of the communities that have some kind of, in quotes, ownership of those knowledges exercise thereon.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that comment, and I think it connects to something that was said earlier. That maybe sometimes AI is not always the answer, or AI might not always be the answer. And acknowledging that is very important. Yes, I think you had a comment to make.
So I think in terms of how the fishing example is really interesting because it's going back to traditional forms of nature. And so when we're talking about regenerating nature, there's a way that a solution could arrive for the gap that we're talking about between AI and what you were talking about in terms of what's in intuition and creativity within us. And if we talk about lower wage countries that someone else was talking about, what I would say is go back further to rural and indigenous populations to collect the data, because we have to remember the word nature. And so we start jumping onto this hashtag. And so what we see in the world at the moment is you see think tanks that are comprised of the ways that we're continuing the future. So the future of education completely needs to be changed because we're at a future which I think has brought us back. So we need to go back to the history of where it started. So if you start looking at countries, even if you talk about nature below water, for example, a lot of the stories exist, and I'm sure you found a lot through fishing. But again, if you look at countries such as India and countries where you might think are not as advanced, the highest polluted countries, when you go back to what ancient wisdom had, they were already not using plastic bags when they were going shopping. These are smaller examples. But where I come from is we're involved in vertically integrated green infrastructure from mining to the end usage. And again, I see an underrepresentation. We were talking earlier, Elizabeth's right next to you, about how bricks and mortar is also an area that's ignored because you have the hashtag of AI, ChatGPT. It becomes what's cool on Instagram and whether you've actually been on the ground and done that. And I think that's where we need to go backwards to people, to the almost a population that's not educated. So you can go into what nature was developed as when nature was not a problem.
I'm going to, since you already brought up the example of stories, specifically through fishing, one of the things that usually happens in a majlis as well is the sharing of stories. And so I'd like to share with you a story about I would say in January of this year. We started the research at the foundation that I work at in Abu Dhabi. And part of our research basically took us out to different parts of the UAE to listen to and talk to people from the elderly generation. And we were trying to talk to them about sustainability. And for those of you who don't know, this year is the year of sustainability in the UAE. So we wanted to talk to them about sustainability practices, and we wanted to kind of learn from them what are some practices that they used in the past that are sustainable practices. First of all, the word sustainability was foreign to them. They just said, they kept asking us to define sustainability. However, in everything that they described, they were sustainable. They just didn't need the word in order to define a behavior that was second nature to them. That was just the way that they lived and existed. They didn't need a label and a word to make it something. And an example of that, they told us that when they used to go out fishing, one of the challenges we face today is overfishing. And so they said, when they used to go out fishing, they would actually know that every boat was assigned a certain day. Not everyone was going out every single day to fish. There was no rules written. It was just an honorary system. They all honored the schedule that everyone abided by, and that's how they went out to fish. The second thing that they did, they never took more than what they needed. They would tell us, they said, we used to go out. We know that our family is made up of 15, 10 individuals, whatever the number it is, and we would just fish for the needs of our family for that particular day or for the next few days. And so the more and more we talk to them, the more we realize that there's so much to learn from them. And our words today were very strange to them because they just said that's how we behaved and that's how we lived. So there's definitely so much value from just going back to the past and learning from the past, because people just had to survive at some point and had to do without the technologies and without AI. So I just wanted to share that as a story. Any other comments?
I would love to make another comment in addition to that. That is, with all the technology that we have, we made so much progress, yet we are completely disconnected exactly with what those people did. They are connected with their environment. If you are collecting, for instance, information of indigenous people, go to the Amazons, and those Indians have no idea what you are talking about in terms of data because they are connected. The tree is their nephew. How can I express it in data?
Thank you very much. I will just share briefly on something someone talked about. By the way, my name is Daniel Ajadonu, Future Generations Global Ambassador, an initiative of the Future Generations Commissioner for Wales. Also, I'm an executive board member at International Student Young Progress, where I lead the ISIP Africa project focused on nuclear disarmament and nuclear energy capacity building in Africa. Someone talked about how do you ensure climate security in Africa and the global south, low-wage countries. And I'll talk about its intersection with AI and nuclear energy. Nuclear energy provides a very sustainable source of energy globally. However, it is underinvested in Africa. It could provide agriculture, rail security, food security, water desalination, nuclear medicine, and nuclear power. And what does AI do? AI can help accelerate research in these areas, automate tasks, improve the effectiveness of analysis. And these can all help propel Africa's sustainable development, mitigating climate insecurity and enhancing economic development in the long run. However, there's a major crux, which is where there lies a huge gap between the global south and the west: technology transfer, capacity building. And I think that the core which needs to be focused on to bridge these gaps is capacity building within this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think maybe Said will just introduce the last question, because I know we run over time. The last question, and then we'll hear from you before we close.
I think we'll bring up a topic that many people might enjoy talking about. And when we talk about governments, we think about bureaucracy. Things take too long. Very similar to international organizations. And things tend to be slower than other things. But when we talk about the EU more recently, we've seen that they passed a law which wanted to ensure that the data being collected, and I see today through multiple conversations we touched on data. So the law that they passed on data specifically wanted to make sure that the data is non-biased, non-gender biased, non-discriminable. And with that, I'd like to hear from you, what do you feel that the governments and the international organizations should focus on to make sure that data is in the right place? What are the strategies that they should take on board? Any thoughts on that?
Coming from the government, I do face a lot of problem when implementing green energy projects back in Malaysia. So there are 5 gigawatt of solar panels that needs to be deployed, but due to bureaucrats, a lot of processes, budget couldn't be spent, and we're hoping that there are AI solution in the procurement space. On the other hand, facilitating trading between countries like Japan and Korea, knowing that Malaysia is the 4th gas producer in the world, biggest gas producer in the world at the moment, but we're going green hydrogen, biomass, bioenergy, but there are different sort of standards, in terms of carbon trading elements and all that. We were also hoping that if there are AI solutions that could help us to facilitate trade, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. My name is Nazim Steres. I'm the CEO of Food and Connect. We are a company that's owned by the University of Cape Town. Maybe my comment will address all the questions so far. Our government has signed an agreement with the EU, in fact, with regard to climate mitigation and climate adaptation. And one of the conditions in that is that the smallholder farmers should benefit to a large extent. But however, there's a huge gap that exists because smallholder farmers don't have access to information. It's a huge asymmetry there. So what we've done is that we've created an AI platform that can actually address all these gaps, including entrepreneurship, access to skills, transfer technology, information, and as well as markets and finance. What we found at the lower level is that not only are they more competitive within the value chains that they're operating in, but they also now, the concentration that exists within our food systems are more and more, or getting closer and closer now. So you don't find so many small companies or big companies concentrating the market where they used to have 60–70% of the market share. So that is actually one of the things that our government is doing in South Africa as well. Thank you.
You were just asking, what can the government do? And I guess there's a great example of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, where they release their problem statements and they create sandboxes of access to data, and they also partner startups and technology companies with those problem statements and with the users. And it really just fosters innovation and collaboration, because anything is possible when you work together. No one can solve everything on their own. No government, no company, no individual, and no entrepreneurial company, no matter how good you are. And we've been a lot of talking about ChatGPT. And so when we collaborate, then the magic happens. And we're talking about big problems to solve and big humanity challenges to solve. And obviously the power is in us as individuals and intergenerational in our younger children and their children. That's why we're doing it. So they have the ability to choose, and demand transparency. And that's something coming through. I have 4 children, and they're already making decisions based on transparency and information that protects our planet that we don't even think about. And so it's really about bringing those together. And one of the best examples I have seen is the Monetary Authority of Singapore, that issues these problem statements to innovative companies, creates a safe sandbox to use AI to access data, and then partners with you. And in this instance, it was FinTech Festival with banks. And so we can actually prove the solution works, and then you can then scale it. So it's a really great example of collaboration. Thanks.
Thank you for that example. Yes.
Yes, if I can just put a few thoughts from before. So I'm Goran Simic, and I'm in general technologies, lately focused on AI. What I would just like to add, always try to solve the solution without AI if it's possible, and then look for AI as a solution at the end. In that way, it will be sustainable, economical, possible. And then, if I can add, the gentleman was saying that we are trying to give AI, to transfer to AI our decision making. Yes, we are, because we just don't have capacity anymore to make 100,000 decisions a day, how much we have to do every day, and we cannot go back to the nature and indigenous knowledge just because we are overloaded. I'm personally overloaded. What I would like to propose about the government is definitely to incentivize universities, not just technology universities, and enable them, and incentivize even in UAE, I can even say through different apps that exist in UAE, because it's already digital government, incentivize the regular people to help, let's say, gather the knowledge and ask the questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we're going to have to end. We have overstayed our welcome here, no matter how hospitable people are. So thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you for being open to trying something different, a different setup. I hope that you have enjoyed it, benefited from it, and I hope that you can maybe establish some connections with people who you haven't established a connection with yet. So with that, I'll just hand it over to Saeed to also close for us the session. Thank you so much.
I think there are quite interesting themes that we've seen today. We talked about data. We talked about different generations and their effectiveness in sharing knowledge and information that could potentially affect the way that AI engines are built on. We've seen that government can actually change the course of things as well, as long as they are involved. Those definitely key areas that we're going to continue to talk about, and definitely that will lead us to an amazing, impactful solutions at the end of the day. Thank you again for being with us today. Really appreciate it.